Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Ken Miller. Ken, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Aaron.
Usually I lead with some bit about me being from New York and my guests being from somewhere, some godforsaken place. I don't even, you told me where you are like 3 minutes ago, and it was somewhere in Washington. I've just totally deleted it from my memory. So I'm going to start with two things, and then we're going to get back to the first, but I'm going to ask you something in a second. But I just want to say to all of the loyal listeners of the Keep Hustling podcast, I am blessed that we are 140 or so episodes into this podcast endeavor. And I hope that you're learning from something. I hope you're learning something from this. I get random people reaching out to me to be on this podcast. Never, ever have I gotten an email with the subject, like when Ken reached out to me in February of 2026. So I'm going to tell the listeners before we get to your story and what I want to get more into, exactly what the subject of that email was so that they understand just what's about to happen here on the Keep Hustling podcast. And the subject is as follows from February 5th, 2026 at 11 a.m. New York time. Aaron, your listeners will learn from my addiction and incarceration. Bam. We're going to get there, but that's what we're getting to, people. I don't usually tee it up, but I love the subject. Here's another one for you listeners. Ken Miller was raised in Anchorage, Alaska. That was never even on my Keep Hustling podcast bingo board. So I want to start with that, Mr. Miller. Anchorage, Alaska. I think you're the only person I've ever met in my life who was raised in Anchorage, Alaska. So I'm just going to turn the floor over. Tell us about that. Tell us about the early years, kind of what formed your hustle. Yeah, I just want to know about Anchorage.
So I'm a byproduct of obviously my past. I'm 63 years old. I was born in 1962 to a teenage runaway, white female in New York, from Queens. And my father was...
I'm from Queens, but we won't hold that against us,
Yeah,
right?
I'm telling you. I don't. She was of Irish background, and my dad was a black pimp and drug dealer in New York. And I'm the byproduct of that union. I was put up for adoption at birth and did 6 years in the foster homes in New York and now in Long Island. And then I moved up to upstate New York, Middletown, Orange County. And then at age 12, my mom was looking for work, and she found work in Anchorage, Alaska. I was the first day of 8th grade. I cried like a baby, and that's how I ended up in Anchorage, Alaska. And so I went there from 8th grade until, I got out of college. So that's how I ended up in Anchorage, Alaska.
Being a kid from New York City, I got to ask, what's it like? What's it like high school in Anchorage? Middletown, New York, I know.
Yeah.
Anchorage, Alaska, I don't.
It actually was great because it was, a small percentage of African Americans, and I'm African American.
We envisioned just like icicles all year round coming around and people, Eskimos.
No. Up, farther up north, it can be pretty, the weather can be very, very harsh, minus 40, 50, 60 degrees. That's harsh. But where we were at, it might get minus 20, minus 25, which is cold. Believe me. It's like wet is wet, cold is cold, no matter where you're at. But it was a great opportunity because if I had remained in New York, I would not have had the opportunities. The schools were great. I went to advanced placement. I was a National Merit Scholar. I was accepted to Harvard. I went to Dartmouth College up in New Hampshire. So, but if I'd gone to school in New York, I can pretty much guarantee you I would not have ended up academically where I ended up. And then we're all in this together. We're all dealing with the weather. We're all dealing with being away from what we call the lower 48. So there's a sense of camaraderie there. And so I think growing up there was great. And this is one other thing. This is a big difference from New York and Alaska. In New York, there's a thing called nepotism. I know this. I know the Italians, the Irish, even the African Americans, but there's nepotism that's built in because family wants to take care of family or communities want to take care of their community. And Anchorage, they could care less what your background. Can you do the job? That's what they want to know, because it's hard to get people up there to do certain work. So it gave great opportunity for me, and my brother, my sister-in-law did phenomenally well. We did well. I've done well, except I had a little problem later on. So that's a big difference between New York and Alaska.
I love the fact that you turn that somewhat unique part of the story into a piece about education.
Mm-hmm.
And also just the value of community. I think that one of the things, unfortunately, that we're missing today in the world is that sense of community. As a practicing Orthodox Jew, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that there's a tremendous amount of nepotism in the Jewish world too in New York. But that's okay. I have fun with that.
Yeah.
You got to embrace it. But what I will say is, I think that people, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a community of faith, but a lot of times religion is that community.
Mm-hmm.
I think that so many people today, especially younger people, underestimate the value of that community, and they'll never know because they don't know what they're missing. And for you, it's interesting to me because when we talk about what molds the hustler, what created Ken Miller to the 7-figure business leader that he is today, there's something about the dichotomy between loneliness in the foster system and finding community in a rural place. Meaning, I think if you ended up in a big city like New York or Chicago or LA, it would have been, you might have gotten lost again from the loneliness of that. But there was something about that community that's so powerful. And it's great to hear you reflect on that, because I think that so many people miss that in life or don't realize what they're missing by not engaging in that. I imagine that there's a complicated part of the story that comes next. And I'd like to hear about that, because there is part of this. You put it in the subject, as I mentioned. So
yeah,
tell us.
That's one of the nicest ways to put it. There's a complicated part of the story. There's a part of the story that has a lot of pain, has a lot of negative emotional content. There's a part of the story, and it's my story, so I'll tell it. I go off to college. I had never drank. I had smoked weed maybe twice. I go to college, Ivy League, and I'm exposed to the fraternity system. I'm exposed to drugs, and I am an alcoholic and a drug addict, period. Didn't matter what my background was, didn't matter what had happened to me as a child, didn't matter, what stresses I had as a Ivy League student. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict to this day. I'm just not active. I'm coming up on 22 years clean and sober. But before that,
Congratulations to you.
clean and sober, I began drinking. And within probably a month, I was a full-blown alcoholic. And then I picked up, a cocaine problem and a drug problem. And so when I graduated from college, I went into the corporate world, did well, 3M Corporation, Kodak. And then I relapsed, and I was to spend the next 20, 21 years either homeless, incarcerated, in treatment, or in prison. That was my next 21 years as an Ivy League graduate.
I imagine that there's a part of that story where you want to give up. I imagine that there's a moment in a prison cell, on a street corner, as part of the addiction. There's that moment of realization, I imagine. Hey, I am well educated. Even though I was in the foster system, I was taken out of it and still given the opportunities to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder how you ultimately got out of that. And I will ask another question first, and that is, at the time, did you know about your parents, about your birth parents?
No.
Because there's something powerful there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But I would love to know about the moment where you're sitting on the stoop or you're in the cell and you have two choices. One of them is give up, or the other one is to keep hustling. So can you take us to the mindset there and kind of how that was able to then ultimately allow us to have the privilege of, as far as today, to hear your story?
Sure. And I know you're from New York as soon as you said the word stoop. It's the only city that I know that has stoops, and plays stickball.
Not in my generation, but I like to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, I've done both. Okay. And I know what a Spalding is. So, the sense of giving up. So I've tried to commit suicide 3 times, never in prison, because in prison, I did prison well. I mean, I was comfortable in prison. And that's a whole thing I could talk about for the next couple of hours on how do you become comfortable in prison. I was comfortable because I wasn't under the influence of the drugs. I didn't do drugs in prison. So I didn't have that difficulty. My problem was when I was out of prison and on the streets. And it's so interesting because I look at the title, Keep Hustling. And, hustling means different things in different communities. But I was known as a hustler. But I'm still a hustler. I built my business by hustling, but I also did things on the streets because I hustled. Okay. So that was a part of me. But how do you take the hustle and put it into positive means? That's the key. And so there has to be a pivot point or a transformation that is done within and has to be internal. Has to be internal. It can be internal mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Sometimes it has to also be physical. But that's what I did in prison. So I went to prison 3 times, spent years behind bars. And on that third time in prison, I had a conversation with God. And since that day, I've always felt protected and also always knew, and I remained on point. But I still had to hustle. I still had to hustle emotionally, physically, and spiritually. What does that mean? I needed to engage. I had to keep moving positively toward a desired goal or aspiration. And so I did that in 3 different areas. Well, really all 4. I did the physical also because I was a mess when I went into the penitentiary.
There's something amazing about hustling, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea here, but I do think that you're onto something, which is if you have that inherent energy or hustle built into you, it's an itch. You got to scratch it, and you have it or you don't. And there are people who cultivate it, or maybe it's sitting and it's covered and they have to uncover it. But those natural born hustlers, I'm privileged to speak to because of this project, hundreds of entrepreneurs. And one of the common themes is that itch. It's just amazing to me that there's a strange tension between, does a person wish that they never had the itch or the hustle desire, because that probably is what got you in trouble, right? Because you said you were hustling on the streets, but it's also what got you out.
Yeah.
It's also what gave you I can't give up because I don't give up because I keep hustling. But it's what you got. But had you not had that in you in the beginning, in the first place, you wouldn't have hustled on the streets, you wouldn't end up in trouble. So it's almost like, what's the best way to cultivate that? It's the adrenaline. And I just think that obviously your journey was probably longer and harder than many, but everybody has to fall some way. That doesn't mean everybody has to end up in jail or in rehab. That's not what I'm saying. But every hustler has to be knocked off the cliff a little bit in order to, I think, gain their ultimate strength.
Possible. This is really good. So what we need to do is define what makes you a hustler. What makes you a hustler on the streets or in the corporate world? Because I've done it in both. I'm just going to name a couple. Number 1, a hustler always sees opportunity. Always sees opportunity. I walked down the street when I used to hustle on the streets. I just saw opportunity. Sometimes we call them marks. Sometimes we call them potential avenues of income and drugs. But we see opportunity. Okay. The other thing is, to be a hustler, you have to be courageous. You have to have courageous. You have to have the ability to make the ask, whether it's you looking, you want something, whatever the hustle may be. And then you also have to be able to deal with discomfort. A hustler by nature is either comfortable or is willing to accept discomfort. That's why a lot of people can't hustle, because they don't want discomfort. I embrace discomfort.
Right. And I agree with you. But what I think allowed you to embrace that discomfort now are the life experiences that you had in the past. And what I often wonder, it's like, I don't know if you could tell, I'm like a loud New Yorker type. And I remember I was once sitting with a mentor of mine, and I said, every once in a while, I just wish I could be the guy who just sits in the corner crying. And he goes, no, you don't. No, you don't, because that's not you. So what inspires me about your story is the fact that you're not running or hiding from that part of your life. In fact, you're saying that it was in that moment that you got to, that inspired you to put things in order and get to where you are today. And I think that is a level of truth that many people never get to in their life.
Yeah, that's very true. And they'll never will get to it. I mean, let me put it this way. You don't have to be a hustler to be successful.
100%. I agree with you on
So
that.
much of it is, how do you define success? My wife is not a hustler. I am a hustler. I'll make that call. I'll do this. I will approach this person. I will open this door that other people won't open, or at least take the chance. And I have the courage to do X, Y, Z. Some people are comfortable in being comfortable. I'm not. I've always want more. And I'm good at it. I was a good hustler on the streets, and I'm a good hustler in the corporate world, if we so use that term. There's a kissing cousin to hustling, and it's called grinding. And that's what a hustler does. They grind.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
Well, a grind has a very specific. A grind is an attainment. I teach a little course on grinding. When you grind, you are trying to obtain a desired result. And you have a plan, you have action, but it has to have discomfort built into it, or it's not a grind. The most famous grinder that we know is Kobe Bryant. That's the example we always use, or one of the ones that we use, because he was willing to go in there and do his 10,000 shots or his 1,000 shots each and every day. You know, a Jerry Rice and what he did to work out each and every day to get to the level, to grind, because if there's no discomfort in it, it's just a habit. You can say it's a habit with discomfort. That's a grind in attaining a desired result. Okay. So again, I just call it a kissing cousin. I mean, they're real close. You know, they may be.
Yeah, I think that grind is the action, hustle is the mentality.
It could be.
That's the way I
love that.
look at it. And I tell people all the time, especially via this podcast, you know, the saddest image, or the image of the only image of failure that I can envision is there's an image, and it should literally be the logo of this podcast, because I talk about it so much, of the guy who's pushing the rock up the mountain.
Okay.
And he gives up just before the top, but he doesn't know that he's just before the top because he can't see the top. But if you zoom out, you see this massive mountain that he's climbed the whole way, and had he just taken 2 more steps after the first 1,000, not after the first 2, taking another 1,000, but after the first 1,000, he would have reached the top. And that, to me, is what keep hustling is. That's what a person has to define, because if you can define where you want to go,
I love it.
then you can grind it out and keep maintaining the hustle. You talk about, let's pivot to this. Okay. You talk about sharing experiences and strategies. We hear the experience that inspire, but also help those who are listening to your story implement life changes grounded in truth. Take us there.
Well, we can talk about shared experience, or you can talk about this term that's so popular today, lived experience. You don't know about my lived experience. Yeah, well, you can. You know, in the end, you know, we talk about keep hustling. To hustle without a dream is for naught. To hustle without a dream is for naught. I talk all the time with the men. So I mentor men all over the country. I speak from the stage all over the country. And one of the things I talk about is action. Because hustling, you've got to have action. It's not, and I know you said mindset, but to have that mindset, there's got to be some action for the hustle itself.
Or to keep the mindset, in order to keep it. In order to get it from fleeting, you have to put it into action.
You got to put it in action. And I always talk to men about this. Are you doing vertical action or horizontal action? And they're like, well, what's that? I'll tell you what it is. If I take you to the pool, to the deep end, and I throw you into the deep end, and you're 6-7 feet away from the edge to get out of the deep end, you can do horizontal action and swim to that edge. Or you can do vertical action and just tread water. And sooner or later, you're going to drown. You can run in place, or you can run toward the goal. They're both action. One's vertical, one's horizontal.
Do you find that many people think they're doing horizontal action, but they're really stuck in vertical?
100%. 100%.
So how does a person know that, and how do they get out of it?
A lot of times, number one, do you feel like you're getting closer to the attainment? Are you getting micro successes on the path to the attainment? And number 3, are you looking or seeking feedback from others as to whether I am doing horizontal action or vertical action. I'll give you a real quick one in the corporate world. So what we find out in the marketing world, a lot of people spend a lot of time on social media, and a lot of that is vertical action. Yeah, I'm busy. I'm doing a post here and I'm doing a post there, but they're not attaining anything that's going to bring in new clientele. But they're doing, here's another term we use, busy work. They're doing busy work. Okay. So,
But how does a person know if they're if they're really going around in circles, or if they're getting towards their goal? How can a person define that?
this is how you define it. You define the goal, and I like using this term, desired state of being, and then we have markers on the way. So if I want to run 5 miles, I got a mile marker. Okay, I can see that mile marker. I've hit it. Good. I must be going in direction toward my goal. I have a goal to make $250,000, or I have a goal to retire with $1 million net assets. I got markers along the way to let me know that my actions, my hustle are leading me towards the desired
And that's
state.
what keeps you true. That's what keeps you on the path, and that's what keeps you heading
Yeah,
towards the truth.
it does, but that's why I'm a real big one on this, Aaron, is using outside mentors, coaches, trusted advisors to help me course correct at times. And it's also one of the best qualities, if not one of the most important qualities, is the ability to self-audit. What's really going on? What's truth about what I'm doing, and obtainment of, again, what my goal, my aspiration, my desired state of being.
There's so much there. I have to ask, you talk about speaking all over the country.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about the most impactful stage for you that you've spoken on?
Man, that's a good question. Again, let me think. Okay, I'm thinking about some of the different stages. I have spoken, and I've had individuals come up to me in tears because my truth allowed them to be more comfortable with their truth and to go into somewhere that they had not gone into or felt safe to go into it. And then we go out into the hall because somebody else is either speaking or it's the speech, and we talk for 45 minutes to an hour about that.
It's so interesting you say that,
Mhm.
because the times that I've been privileged to speak publicly, sometimes you feel like your message is coming out of your mouth very well, but you can't really tell how it's being received. And sometimes you're not sure how you're delivering it, but you can feel the energy
Mhm. Mhm.
of the reception. And it's a feeling that's almost impossible to explain or bottle up. So I love that you said that. I have to ask, because I would be remiss if I didn't. Your story is incredible. It goes from foster care to Anchorage, to addiction, to incarceration, to homelessness, to incarceration, to addiction, to the mentor and 7-figure business leader that we're speaking to today.
Mhm.
Is there anything you would do differently today? Is there any chapter you wish you could remove? If so, why? And if not, why?
Hundreds.
But didn't those make you who you are today?
I don't care. I don't care.
Take us there.
I've hurt people, Aaron. I've hurt people badly. I've put people into the hospital. I had 3 women try to commit suicide because of my actions. Yeah, I'll take that back and have a square, boring life. But I did
Yeah,
that, and I'm guilty of those things, but I'm not shame-based. And this is just partly me being on this podcast, is partly me giving back for the people I have hurt. I had a woman tell me, let me just finish one. I had a woman tell me one day, I got into the anonymous programs, I have to make an amends. So I wrote her, and she wrote me back. She said, if you died yesterday, it would not be soon enough for me. That's how I affect people in my addiction and as a human. I'm not that person anymore. I understand that. So if I could change my story? Yes. I wish I had never picked up crack cocaine. I wish I had never taken the first drink. I was damaged before I took my first drink, mentally, emotionally, but I could have got over that without the drugs. I could have matured a lot quicker, a lot sooner, and not affected the people in the negative way I have. So what I've done, and I know what you were saying there, is I've taken those experiences and I've used them for good. But it's the one people say to me all the time, oh man, because I'll talk in a meeting, anonymous meeting or so, man, I wish I had stories like you have. No, you don't. No, you don't. I got to live with this. Okay. And I still feel for those people. There are people I cannot make an amends to because I am not legally allowed to make the amends by the courts. I could go to prison if I try to contact some of these victims. And that's what they were. They were victims. So I hope I didn't get too sensitive on that, but I just
No. And I want to say this too. I was sitting there listening. I was thinking, most people would expect you to say it happened. Bad stuff happens, and it made me who I am today, and therefore it was worth it. But it's just I so respect and appreciate the honesty, because so many people would not only run from the past but hide from it and say, "What do you mean? It made me who I am today." And yes, sometimes people get crushed on the way up, but I did my best, and I'm trying to be a good member of society. But I love the fact that you said, even though it made you who you are today, those people didn't deserve that. And I really, really, really appreciate the honesty.
Thank you.
And that's what this podcast is about.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What a story. Okay. Anchorage, Alaska. Love it. As you know, Mr. Miller, we have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote and what it means to them. So with that, I'll say, I have learned from your addiction, your incarceration. I've learned from your story. You've inspired me. And thank you for coming on again. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
So I'm a little different. I have two. Okay. I'll take one from my mother who's passed away, Irene, Senior Pomeroy. She said, Kenneth, you do not have to act the way you feel. You do not have to act the way you feel. You may be having a bad day. They don't need to know that. You don't have to treat other people because you're in pain or discomfort. That's number one. But hands down, if you go to my Facebook page, it's on my Facebook page. My hands down favorite saying of all time is, in the end, you will do what you want to do bad enough. Period.
Love that.
And what it did, it takes away all the excuses. In the end, I did what I did because that's what I wanted to do at that time. Okay? When I do good things, it's because that's what I want to do. When I do bad,
it goes in both directions.
Yep, goes both directions. But at least it allows me to see my truth and accept my culpability or agency in all my actions.
I love that. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.